Today's story is about major military and security developments in Nigeria, where international partners, especially the United States, have become more deeply involved in the fight against Boko Haram and other extremist networks. Before we begin, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-time, clear news updates you can trust. Right now in Nigeria, the security situation remains very serious and very fluid, and the world is watching closely. Over recent weeks and months, the United States has carried out targeted strikes on extremist groups inside Nigerian territory. On December 25, 2025, the U.S. military launched precision airstrikes against Islamic State-linked militants in northwest Nigeria, specifically in Sokoto State, targeting camps where extremist fighters were believed to be operating. And these air operations were conducted with close cooperation and intelligence sharing between the Nigerian government and the U.S. authorities. This cooperation was not spontaneous. Reports show that days, even weeks, of intelligence gathering and coordinated planning took place before any missiles flew. Nigeria supplied vital intelligence about the militant locations, and the US supplied surveillance and aerial capabilities to make the operation possible. Let me remind you, if you find this explanation useful, please like and subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates on this story. The strikes involved Tomahawk cruise missiles and other precision munitions launched from US assets in the region, including naval platforms in the Gulf of Guinea. Here, the stated goal was to disrupt Islamic State affiliates and extremist camps that had expanded into the northwest of Nigeria beyond the more widely known insurgency in the northeast. It is important to understand that this is part of a broader security crisis across Nigeria. Boko Haram and the Islamic State West Africa Province, known as ISWAP, remain active threats, particularly in the northeast, where they have waged a violent insurgency for more than 15 years. And that conflict began as a local rebellion but has evolved into a well-armed extremist movement responsible for thousands of deaths and the displacement of millions of people. Now, this international involvement is deepening. In January 2026, the United States and Nigeria established a joint working group focused on counter-terrorism cooperation. It is official statements confirm that this group met in Abuja and is meant to strengthen intelligence sharing, tactical coordination, and other joint activities to protect vulnerable communities and support security operations. This expanded cooperation also involves increased U.S. support in terms of equipment, logistical aid, and training assistance for Nigerian security forces. According to military officials, the United States is boosting material deliveries, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assistance and tactical training for Nigeria's forces on the ground. But while air support and international aid are part of the strategy, the violent conflict on the ground continues. Just in the last few days, Nigerian forces carried out a successful raid in Borno State, killing a high-ranking Boko Haram commander and 10 other militants in the Sambisa Forest, a long-standing stronghold of extremist fighters. At the same time, reports confirm that armed extremists have carried out deadly attacks against civilians and security forces in northeastern Nigeria. In Sabongari, Borno State, militants ambushed a construction site and a military base, killing dozens of civilians and soldiers and injuring many others. Just about a week ago, there was news that suspected Boko Haram fighters attacked Nigerian troops, killing at least 7 soldiers and capturing 13 others in Borno State. This highlights that, despite multinational assistance and their operations, extremist groups still have little capacity and can strike government forces. Yet these events underscore a stark reality. Nigeria's terrorism crisis is still serious, and deadly violence has not stopped. This is not a situation where a single military action ends the problem. Militant groups are adaptive and resilient, and the conflict has deep roots tied to poverty, weak governance, and regional instability. As we continue, I encourage you to like this video and subscribe because this story is evolving daily and you will want updates. Now, international reaction has been mixed. The United States has framed its airstrikes as a part of a counter-terrorism effort, and the Nigerian government officially described the December strikes as a joint operation carried out with respect for Nigeria's sovereignty. At the same Some independent analysts and observers have raised questions about the long-term impact of airstrikes. They warn that without addressing the root causes of the conflict, including political, economic, and social drivers of extremism, external military action alone may not bring lasting peace. Some argue that there is a risk such operations could even intensify insecurity if militant groups adapt to avoid direct confrontation. We also see diplomatic discussions behind the headlines. In late 2025, there was debate over U.S. characterizations of violence in Nigeria, including public statements by American leaders that framed extremist attacks as persecution against specific religious groups. Nigeria officially rejected claims of genocide and emphasized that violence affects both Muslims and Christians, by pointing out that extremist groups have killed people from all faiths. This diplomatic tension is part of a broader narrative, and it matters because it shapes how partners work together and how Nigerians perceive foreign involvement in their domestic security. But let me remind you once more, pause this video and hit that like button and subscribe if you appreciate the clarity of these updates. On the ground, Nigerian forces continue Operation Hadin Kai, the long-running counter-insurgency campaign against Boko Haram and affiliated groups in the northeast. This operation dates back to 2015 and has been Nigeria's main military response to extremist violence. Alongside this, military efforts have expanded in the northwest with operations like Operation Fasanyama, aimed at tackling armed extremist networks that have grown in regions like Sokoto and Zamfara states. With U.S. support, these operations aim to cut off militant reach and reduce violence that has spilled over into new parts of Nigeria. It is also important to mention that extremist violence in Nigeria is linked to bigger regional dynamics. Groups once focused solely on local insurgency now operate across borders, connecting with broader networks in the Sahel region. This makes the fight more difficult because militants exploit borders and weak governance to move, recruit, and resupply. Despite all these challenges, there is progress too. The Nigerian military has shifted to more proactive tactics, and cooperation with international partners is meant to improve intelligence and response capacity. But again, for these efforts to succeed, coordination between local communities, government forces, and international partners must continue and deepen. Before we go further, let me ask you to hit like and subscribe again if you are finding this breakdown helpful and if you want real-time coverage as the situation evolves. Now, let's talk about impacts beyond the battlefield. The violence has had massive consequences for everyday Nigerians, families displaced from their homes, schools and businesses shut down because of fear, and communities struggling to rebuild after attacks. International organizations and humanitarian agencies continue working to support affected families, but those efforts are often hampered by insecurity and lack of access to some regions. So where does this leave Nigeria today? There's in short, so the fight against Boko Haram and related extremist networks is ongoing and complex. International involvement like U.S. airstrikes and deepening strategic cooperation signal a new phase in this long struggle. But these efforts are just one part of a much larger picture that includes political stability, social inclusion, economic opportunity, and community resilience. Let me remind you one more time. Please like this video and subscribe if you want more detailed, real-time news in clear English.